Mass Effect 1, the motion picture, is a sci-fi role-playing game where you explore the galaxy and save it from impending doom against an army of robot aliens. Being an Alliance Marine, your way of dealing with these enemies is by shooting them. Or is it? I'm a frog, and for this video, I wanted to see if I could beat Mass Effect without shooting. And for good measure, I'll play it on the hardest difficulty, Insanity. I'll have to overcome whatever the game throws at me by meleeing, using powers, throwing grenades, whatever else I want, I just can't shoot. Including in the final boss fight where using powers on said final boss causes the game to crash. Yeah, but we'll get to that. So let's hop in. To start, I'd need to create my character, who I named, of course, Frog Shepherd. I chose Earthborn, and that he's a famous war hero, but my most important choice was class. I always play as soldier, but since I can't shoot, that would be pointless for this. So this time I went with Adept, a biotic specialist, and I would need to learn a completely different playstyle. Speaking of style, I wanted Frog Shepherd to be as handsome as possible and selected everything I thought looked good, only to realize at the end that I had essentially created Lalo Salamanca. Character made, difficulty selected, and we're off. Our journey begins with me staring out of a window while people talk about how awesome I am before getting hit by exposition text and a title card. We're on our way to a planet called Eden Prime alongside a bird with tattoos named Nihilus. He must be a big KOTOR fan. But before even doing anything else, I already had skill points to spend. Given that I can't shoot, it would be very important for me to upgrade my biotic powers. So I spent my first 3 skill points on Charm. After talking to Corporal Jenkins about how bright his future is, I went to the bridge where we got a message from Eden Prime where everyone is dying and there's a giant claw monster in the sky, so we loaded up and went down to the planet. I took a casual stroll while untold numbers of people were being murdered by who knows what, until I pushed up far enough to trigger a cutscene where Jenkins gets deleted from life and it's time for my first combat. What I quickly learned is that recharge times in this game are really slow. My first 2 powers, Warp and Throw, both take 60 seconds to recharge at first. So after using them, I just had to wait for Kaidan to shoot the recon drones for me because I was useless. Speaking of which, yes, this challenge is for me to not shoot. It doesn't matter if my squad mates do, especially considering you're required to have squad mates and they all carry guns. My next level up, I put 3 points into the Adept line, which improves my shielding and lowers the recharge time on powers. Karth and I fought through more recon drones until we encountered a couple of new species, Geth and Woman, as well as a guy who's probably seen better days. We learned that the survivor's name is Ashley, whose well-being I immediately cared more about than Jenkins or Kaidan's, and we continued on. The good thing about Geth troopers and later husks as opposed to the recon drones is that I can actually punch them since they aren't flying. With my new camo armor, they couldn't even see me coming. The joke is that camo makes you literally invisible, even though we all know that isn't actually true. Meanwhile, Nihilus comes across one of the 2 big bads named Saren, but doesn't know that he's bad and gets Lennied. This level is considered a prologue, so none of the combat is really that hard. Believe me when I tell you, though, that it's not going to stay that way as we go through the game. I charmed a couple people to gain extra weapons that I couldn't use anyway, fought my way through more Geth, and very nearly died because I got a bit cocky and pushed up way too far, ran around disabling bombs, discovered a very efficient way of killing Geth by knocking them off a ledge, and we found our objective, a giant pole, which Ashley accidentally activates like an idiot, but because I'm the main character, I tossed her out of the way and got sucked in myself and was shown horrifying images like I just took too many Benadryls. Next, we flew to the Citadel, which is the big hub world of the game, where along with the main story, I was free to roam around and complete side quests. I ran around scanning bugs called Keepers, disabled a rogue ChatGPT, acquainted myself with the Asari consort, talked to a Hanar who was being harassed by a British Turian for preaching without a license, gambled, went to a strip club for strictly professional reasons, and participated in a sting operation. The main quest line has me argue with the council about Saren being a bad guy, which they don't believe, so I have to collect evidence, which leads me to this fight against a couple assassins and my very first death of the playthrough. I then followed up my first death by doing the exact same thing and dying once again. Unlike the Geth on Eden Prime, I couldn't knock these guys over with melees. But on my third attempt, Kaidan used his biotic powers to knock one over after he pushed up on us, which allowed me to pummel him while he was on the ground like any honorable street fighter. We went to a med clinic and fought more guys who I could just toss around with melees, recruited Garrus, who's the coolest party member in the trilogy, as well as Rex, who's a solid B-tier companion, and went back to the strip club to fight an entire army of bouncers who I could insta-kill with my throw power. The problem being that even after leveling up a few times, it still took 45 whole seconds to recharge. I died once from getting female dog slapped by a Krogan, then pushed through where he made it to the big bad crime boss who just collapsed on the ground after I took out his turrets. The second half of this section was a bit scary because you have to fight your way back out, but now on a timer, which is a slight issue for me given my recharge limitations. So I had to be even more aggressive with rushing and meleeing guys. It was also around this point that I realized what one of my weaknesses was: guys with shotguns. Surprisingly, I wasn't able to withstand shotgun blasts to the face very well. We rescued a lady who still wears a biosuit even though COVID was 160 years ago because she has a danging piece of evidence against Saren, which we present to the council, who are completely surprised by the fact that a guy named after a Nazi nerve gas turns out to be a bad guy. They make me a Spectre and I become the new commanding officer of the Normandy, and it's up to me to stop him, and this is where the game turns even more free roam. But before getting to that, I'd been playing for a few hours at this point and I felt like I needed a break. I hung out with my dog, And then I played Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus, a fast-paced tactical battlefield strategy game you can play in just the palm of your hand. You know, cause it's on your phone. I don't know why I phrased it that way. You can lead your choice of over 70 different legendary champions. Like, look at this guy, Archimados, Master of Possession. Looks pretty scary to me. With these champions, you can fight through battles using their special powers and abilities to defeat the enemy. Or not, you could lose. This is a strategy game. You may have to think a little bit. It's not just press the button to win. You can enter my special gift code NOVHELLO to claim 2,000 gold coins and 50 Blackstones, available until December 1st. That'll give you a jump start on making your champions even stronger, or maybe unlocking some new ones. So check out Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus, available for free in the App Store or Google Play. There's a link in the description and the pinned comment, or you can just scan the QR code on screen. It's a fun strategy game, and with my code, you'll get a nice jump starting out. Thanks to Tacticus for sponsoring this video. Given my issues to this point with powers recharging slow, I wanted to level up a few more times before continuing on the main storyline. So I went to different star systems and hit up some side quests. The execution kinda sucks, but the fact that this game does let you explore and travel around different alien worlds is very cool, and you get to do it in the best vehicle ever created. On my very first planet, I realized the very shrimple fact that I just wouldn't be able to kill everyone. Like this Thresher Maw that attacked. Without being able to fire the Mako's guns, it was Jover. I went into a mine place and found an army of husks. Since they don't shoot, you may think they'd be easy to take out, but the problem is they have this shockwave power that if it hits me, takes out my shields in their entirety and half my health. I did have a couple new powers, Lift and Singularity. They both kind of do the same thing though, which is just pick guys up off the ground. I fought an army of biotic terrorists who were way harder than they had any right to be. They were super aggressive, and my style of play, being reliant on powers that took time to recharge, meant aggressive enemies were a no-go for me. Eventually, I did get through them and convince them not to execute one of the ugliest NPCs in gaming history. I dismantled an atomic bomb and set off to kill the guy who set the atomic bomb, which, speaking of, the good thing about the Mako was that I could kill people by running them over. The bad thing was that this did minimal damage and took forever, so I just have to keep backing over them like a Chinese double hit. I did run into an issue where one of the bad guys in this group got stuck in a rover. I could see his legs and tried punching him, but this didn't seem to be working. I tried a grenade, my throw power, ramming into him with the Mako, yelling at my monitor. Nothing worked, and I just had to load a save and start over. My favorite side quest was one to take out 4 different Geth bases on 4 different planets. I went to the first one, which was a bunker full of husks. Then on the way out, I had to fight actual Geth, and it concluded with me running moreover outside. No big deal at all. The second base was on a snow planet. This one was a big deal because the base had something called a Colossus. I tried ramming into him, which appeared to do 0 damage. There were a bunch of other Geths shooting at me in the base, so I decided to take the Colossus and push it somewhere else. If I couldn't hurt it by running it over, maybe we could just get out of the Mako and handle it the old-fashioned way. No, we couldn't. Garrus and Ashley got wrecked, and we accomplished nothing. We made 0 progress on them. So plan 2 was to kill all the other Geth at the base, get the Colossus completely alone, and then go from there. Because they were all in towers and I couldn't run them over, I'd have to get out of the Mako to kill them. The fun thing about this is that there were snipers all over the place where if I let them shoot me, they would kill me in 1 hit, which I let happen. Quite a few times, actually. Eventually, I did manage to kill all the other Geth, which led me to the next phase of my plan, figure out how to deal with the Colossus. I tried pushing it all over the place. I ran back and forth over it. I tried parking on him, only for him to do wrestling moves on me and shake me off. At one point, I launched him into the sky somehow, but unfortunately, the fall back down didn't kill him. I tried pushing him super far away from the base and seeing if I drove back with it now empty, would I trick the game into thinking everyone was dead? Unfortunately, I was not able to outsmart the 17-year-old video game. I spent over half an hour at the Geth base in total until it became clear to me that I wouldn't be able to take out the Colossus without using the Mako's guns, and I'd have to simply move on and not complete the quest. As someone with RPG OCD who hates leaving quests unfinished, this hurt. I continued exploring planets, mining resources, finding artifacts, fought off a Geth trap where thankfully there wasn't a Colossus, convinced Biotic David Koresh to close down his cult, fought this crazy lady who couldn't accept her husband was dead, talked to Ashley about how much she hates aliens, examined dead Marines while a Thresher Mob was trying to kill me, and decided that was enough side questing for now. I moved back onto the main quest line and went to Therum to find Liara. Because the Legendary Edition is stupid, knocking armatures into lava not only didn't kill them, but did 0 damage at all. Thankfully, I was able to kill them by running them over, unlike the previous Colossus. Funny things happen in this game when you run stuff over, though. Like here I got stuck and couldn't move at all no matter what I did, until the game finally teleported me right to the edge of a lava pool. The game was trying everything it could to keep me from completing this challenge. I did come across another Colossus who I knew I couldn't kill, but regardless, I pushed him all the way into a lava pool with the hope that he'd be stuck and unable to climb out. Given that lava doesn't kill them, I had quite literally condemned it to eternal hellfire. Deserved, to be honest. Eventually, it was time for me to get out and proceed on foot, tossing the Geth around like ragdolls and trying to let Garrus and Ashley catch bullets for me like the good leader I am. At one point in the fight, From the Grave started playing Halo the Master Chief Collection. I threw threw one Geth into the lava, which of course didn't kill him. I don't know why I expected anything different. We worked our way to a fight where I'd have to take out an armature on foot. My strategy was to kill everyone except the armature, which worked well, and I had 0 deaths. Once everyone was dead, me and the gang focused on the armature, who was a lot easier to take out than I expected. Of the story planets, I always come to this one first, and I almost didn't this time because I was afraid I'd need to level up a lot more for this fight to not be a nightmare. But I was incorrect. It wasn't really that bad, actually. We went through the Prothean ruin until we found the blue lady we came for. I mashed buttons until a giant laser turned on. We freed the good doctor, and the planet concludes with the toughest fight I'd had to this point. This Krogan is insane. I died so many times. My favorite death was when I knew I was cooked, and I went into the menu out of desperation to see if I could do something, only to unmenu and immediately get decked. After a little while, I did manage to take him down, and that was one of the major story missions done. At this point, I was level 24 out of 60, had unlocked a few new powers like Lift, Singularity, and Barrier, and had upgraded Throw and Warp fully. I felt decently strong. With the first story planet done, I took a minute to just take care of a few things. I checked up on the crew, pretended to be interested in Ashley's personal life, went back to the Citadel where I got ambushed by a fake news interview with a reporter with an obvious agenda. You have the option to punch her in the face, but I didn't because I don't hit women. I just don't trust them when it comes to driving cars. Turned in a quest with Admiral Sudoku, bought some new equipment, and then snitched on a casino cheater. I left the Citadel, but before going back to the main quest, there was one more side quest I wanted to do, that being to take down a rogue VI on the moon. Why this mission? Because completing it lets me unlock a specialization. If you look at my level up screen, I can't put any more points into Adept, so getting the specialization would let me keep building out that line. Makes sense, right? Well, what I wasn't prepared for was that this quest was quite literally the most painful quest in the entire game for me. So first off, approaching the facility, there's 3 different entrances, each having 2 rocket turrets. I can't shoot them with the Mako, obviously, so I had to get out and try to kill them with biotics and my squad mates. Couple issues with this. First off, they're designed for you to shoot them in the Mako, so I could only make slow progress on them without shooting at all. Second, Ashley and Garrus are stupid and will stand directly where the turrets are shooting and die, so for most of this, I was on my own. Third, the turrets at the other bases shoot at me too, even from far away. I just had to keep moving around to dodge rockets from the other bases and to keep Garrus and Ashley moving as well, and just whittle away at the turret's health. I finally did get them all taken out with no more deaths, and all in all, this took me about 15 minutes. But then I had to go inside of all 3 bases and clear out drones. Drones suck because, like the Geth Recon drones earlier, I can't reliably melee them since they fly around. The only one of my powers that did anything to them was Warp, and also they're strangely aggressive, like they'd push up on me and just ignore Ashley and Garrus entirely. But after a few more minutes, we managed to clear the first base of drones, but we had more to do here still. In each base, there are 8 VI conduits that I had to blow up without shooting. I tried using powers, meleeed a couple times until I got the first with a grenade. The second conduit I punched a couple times and then blew up with 3 grenades. And then the third conduit I only grenaded, which took 4 whole grenades. So that's how I realized that yes, the melees were damaging the conduits, and if I wanted to blow them all up, that's how I'd need to take them out. How many melees does it take to destroy one conduit? 29. I had to melee each one 29 times to blow it up. You may be wondering why I didn't have my squad use powers on them. That's because they can't. I tried. Garrus just doesn't do anything. Is he stupid? On the last one in the base, I tried punching it 28 times and then using Warp, and that worked, so that's how I'd be taking out the rest. Base 1 done, on to base 2. So in the first base, I didn't have to do any gimmicks or anything to get by. Like, it was tough, but I didn't die at all, and it was ultimately fine. Base 2, not so much. I don't know what exactly was hard about this base, but I got obliterated, to the point where I considered giving up on the quest entirely. Until I had an epiphany. What would happen if we just left the base in the middle of fighting? Well, the answer was my dead squad mates would revive, the drones that I had killed would stay dead, and the damage to the others would carry through. So I developed a strategy. Run in, kill a drone or 2, or at least damage them, and then get out. As you can probably imagine, this strategy worked to perfection. I spent another several minutes meleeing more VI conduits, and now there were extra kinetic barriers in every single door opening I had to melee down too. This mission was an actual nightmare, the things I go through for you people. But that was base 2 completed. The third base is very ominous because the drones just stared at me through the barrier while I punched it down, but then once it was done, I picked up with the earlier strategy of do damage, run away. And it took time for sure, but it did work. I took down more conduits, fought more drones that powered up, and had finally completed this stupid side mission. For the specialization, I picked Bastion, which lets me keep reducing the recharge time on my powers. And with that, I left the moon, hopefully to never come back. But there's no time to mope because it was time for me to go to the next story planet, Pharos. I was greeted by this guy who immediately got wrecked. Strangely, the Geth weren't as difficult as some of the enemies I had fought in side quests, like the drones. So I didn't have that hard of a time fighting them here, although apparently I hadn't learned anything from before because I still managed to get sniped a few times. I ran around completing side quests, I turned on water valves, fought space pit bulls, talked to a weird guy, but most importantly... As I was saying, I most importantly had to fight Krogan. For my playstyle, Krogan are the absolute worst enemies to fight against. My damage output isn't that great, so a lot of my tactics just come down to attrition, taking it slow and wearing enemies down. Krogans, though, all have stupidly good health regeneration, which means I can't really do that. And combined with the fact that melees do nothing against them, they're immune to half my powers, and they like rushing and insta-killing me with melees of their own, they're a nightmare, especially in groups like here. It's kind of like that final boss Krogan on Therum that gave me a hard time. Literally every Krogan in this game is just like him, except in this fight I had to deal with 3 at once. After getting absolutely mogged a couple times, I changed courses and tried to split the Krogan up so we could take on one at a time. You may know that I'm a frog, but what you may not know is that I'm also a magician. Now you see the Krogan, and now you don't. The second Krogan I took out right after he broke Ashley's collarbone, and the third and final Krogan by himself wasn't that much of a problem at all. After splattering more basic Geth in the Mako and slowly rolling over armatures, we made it to this area where we walk on foot, and I was jump scared by an armature that I had completely forgotten about, who I foolishly tried to punch before getting vaporized. I once again don't know what I expected. I fought more dogs, including one that got stuck in the floor, killed a Krogan commander, fought even more Krogan, solved a numbers puzzle, and returned to the Mako, where I realized I could insta-kill armatures by knocking them over the railing instead of spending 5 minutes rolling over them. Unfortunately, this led to the cutscene, where a bad guy wants to do bad guy things, and since I don't have completely maxed charm, Shepard has no choice except to shoot him. He fired a gun. If you like this video, be sure to— just kidding. I carried on because him shooting in a cutscene obviously doesn't matter at all to anyone that isn't stupid. Back at home base, we met a new enemy type called Thorian Creepers. No, not an Ithorian, Thorian Creeper. They're terrible. They have so much health and they come in giant packs that take forever for me to get through. I did try getting back in the Mako and splattering this first group, which was safer but seemingly took longer than just fighting them on foot. Because I'm Paragon and not Renegade, this section is all about killing the creepers while incapacitating the actual colonists with either melees or special grenades. Neither of those things involve shooting, so this was fine. Granted, the creepers were slow cooking. Unfortunately, I did not save every colonist. I punched one, turned around, and this lady was straight up dead. My only guess is that her shots bounced off my shield back at her. I considered loading my last save, but I remembered how long it took to get here and decided that if she's stupid enough to die like that, the colony is probably better off without her anyway. We came across a Lovecraftian nightmare of a plant that looks like something you'd find growing in Asmongold's shower, and it spits out Asari clones that try to kill me. They're not that big of a deal, but what is a big deal is how many Thorian creepers I had to fight through in this section. I'll spare you the full details, but this section took me about 45 minutes. Killing the Thorian nodes was slow, the creepers were slow, I'm slow, everything was slow. But upon killing the Thorian, we freed the one Asari in the game that you can't sleep with, who gifted me with the power to see the same images I already saw earlier in the game. Most importantly, that's one more planet down. Back on the Normandy, Liara came on to me, so I set her straight.
I'm not interested in you in that way, Liara.
I took care of more side quests, including one that saw me clear husks in a ship. I died several times because of their stupid shockwave thing they do. I went to another planet where we found more Thorian creepers and the scientists responsible for creating them who offered to pay me off, but I killed them instead. And the best part about this was I found a new biotic amp that, as you can see, was a giant improvement over what I had before. We are so back. Next up was a mission where we go to Cerberus bases and fight mercenaries and man-made horrors beyond my comprehension before finding the corpse of Admiral Big Kahuna Burger. One other thing, you may notice that the guns on my back are different. That's not because I was using those guns, but it was driving my video game OCD crazy that every time I opened the menu, there were guns with better stats across the board begging to be equipped. With that, it was time for the next story planet, and the first one that's actually interesting, Virmire. Virmire starts with me in the Mako, but unfortunately there's a lot of Geth drones which fly in the air, meaning I can't run them over and have to deal with outside of the Mako. I did have one death, but for the most part this entire section was fine with me splattering Geth, then dealing with drones. Then I came across my arch nemesis from earlier once again, the Colossus. Joke's on him though, because he attacked me at the worst possible place, which was right next to a deep sea drop-off where I could deposit him for an insta-kill. I did this for a couple more armatures and Colossuses, and after getting out to clear a couple gatehouses, we were home free. Captain Rex had a bit of a problem with our mission objective, and I had to talk him down. Originally, I was gonna talk him down and then kill him anyway, because I thought it would be funny, but I have too much of a heart for that. I would never laugh at one of my companions being killed. The Salarian Special Forces captain gave a speech that a 10-year-old me ready to run through a brick wall, then the real mission began. And as is customary when fighting the Geth, I immediately died from being sniped. I responded my next attempt by beating the sniper without mercy. After I made it through and fought a Krogan who I sent to the moon, there was another power box thing I had to punch out, even more Krogan who weren't giving me that hard of a time surprisingly, and just like that we were inside Saren's base. We found a crazy Salarian in a holding cell who was begging to be let out, to which I said no, and he proved me right by giving himself CTE. Eventually we fought fought our way to Saren's room, where I came across another Prothean beacon as well as a hologram of Saren's squid ship, who turns out to be an actual Reaper. Props to Shepard, because upon having this realization, instead of fear, his first instinct was to trash talk the Eldritch Horror.
Your extinction is inevitable. We are the end of everything.
There is an entire galaxy of races united and ready to face you.
Sovereign, the 2-kilometer robot ship partly responsible for the genocide of countless alien races, shows he means business by destroying a couple windows, so we left and carried on. We fought more Krogan, I got sniped a couple more times until we made it to the bomb site where Ashley was tasked with arming a nuke. Because for some reason in the year 2183, our only way to set off a nuke is by manually arming it. Regardless, because she's occupied, I had to go with someone other than Ashley in my party for the first time since Jenkins still walked the Earth, and I chose Rex the Krogan. So we fought our way through one more fight, and a dilemma appears where I have to choose between saving Kaidan on one end or Ashley on the other, and I chose Ashley, of course. Not of course. It was a very tough decision. Yep. A lot of time went into making that one. How could I possibly decide between the guy who I haven't had in my party for 10 hours and the hot Marine? Back at the bomb site, I died again, and you'll never guess why. There's a lot of Geth here to kill, and this fight took me a few minutes, which is important because Saren showed up, my Shepard violated the rules of the challenge again despite me clearly stating them at the beginning, and it was boss fight time. Unfortunately, I couldn't save because there were enemies around, so my last save was at the start of the previous fight. Saren is really tough, and not only did I have to worry about Saren, but there were also Geth everywhere who did their best to flank me the entire time. I tried to make it work, but there were too many guys, and I was finished off by yet another sniper, which meant I had to reload all the way back to the start of the last fight and do it again. I went through the cutscene again, alright, and tried 2 of the Saren fight. I had the idea of, what if it lets me retreat to the previous area? And to my complete shock, it did. So I could pop out, hit Saren with some powers, then retreat to hiding where it seemed like the enemy AI couldn't go. It took time, but yeah, this worked. Another cutscene played where I punched Saren in the face, then he flew away. I carried Ashley away and the screen turned black. And it stayed black. Forever. Nothing happened. I could still pause, so I tried saving and loading, which transported me back to the previous area with no one around. I would be stuck here for eternity. There was no way around it. I had to go back to the previous fight again, kill all the Geth. Oh, hey, Saren, cheese to meet you. Attack him, retreat, okay, he flees like a little bit. Grab Ashley, let's get out of here, and okay, I'm back on the ship, we're good. Had that crashed again, you probably wouldn't be watching this video right now, because I would have deleted the game. Blue Man Group's eyes turn black, and she gives me another bad trip, but without further ado, it was time for me to go to the next story planet called Noveria, where White Boy Winter was already seemingly in full effect. We were greeted by a security detail who tried to disarm us before revealing their weaves, and off we go. Noveria is my least favorite planet, at least the start of it. All you do is run back and forth between NPCs, kill a few corrupt security guards, stare awkwardly at this girl while trying to think of something witty to say, talk to this guard with the widest eyes I've ever seen, and then get into the garage where the action begins. Cause Matriarch Benezia somehow managed to sneak an entire army of Geth onto Noveria. Great job, Space TSA. After this first fight, we went to Noveria's Mako section, where I began my assault on the Geth by flipping over and subsequently dying. I took out the first group of Geth, then got out and took care of the turret, but as I progressed, I had a thought. Why don't I just drive past everything? It took me over 12 hours of playing this game before that thought ever crossed my mind. Upon arriving at our destination, we were greeted by more Geth amphetamine, who I had to solo with Ashley because Garrus had gotten stuck at the door. As we fought our way through, it became clear that something wasn't quite right. Oh my god. I forgot to take T. Higgins out of my fantasy lineup even though he's hurt. As easy as the Geth had been to this point, the Rachni were actually really tough. Like here, I should have been cooked, but I got bailed out by Ashley killing the last one right before he got me. And the little green workers, I just didn't have a way of dealing with other than falling back until my squad shot them. After solving a puzzle that's in literally every BioWare game, we fought our way through more Geth in one room, then through the Rachni in another, where this time I wasn't bailed out when one of them rushed me. We talked to some people and went into a lab where we got ambushed and eventually made it to this room with Matriarch Benezia and Asari commandos that are very easy to fling around with biotics. There's waves where more commandos spawn as well as Geth, but I didn't find this fight very hard. I'd maxed out my barrier power at this point, which gave me an extra 1000 shielding and made me super tanky when I needed to be. Plus, like I alluded to earlier, the Geth were honestly some of the easier enemies at this point in the game. We had a conversation with Benezia where Shepard maintained strong eye contact, then we had to fight her, but like just about every other enemy, she could be tossed around like a ragdoll. Then of course came one of the biggest choices in the entire game and trilogy, whether to let the Rachni Queen live or kill her, ending the species. Because this was a massive decision that could change the course of the entire galaxy, not to mention I was determining the fate of an entire species, I came to my decision responsibly, by spinning a wheel. Well, sorry, little bro, but fair is fair. There is one more place I had to go where a dude gets bishoped and I have to fight a bunch of Rachni. Then I set off a self-destruct sequence, and that barrier power I mentioned let me literally just run past the Rachni army to an elevator. And that was Noveria. We were directed to head back to the Citadel because the Council was putting together a fleet to fight Saren, except like complete idiots, they ground the Normandy and prevent me from leaving. This problem was immediately resolved by Anderson punching Udina in the face, and now we're free and can go to the last planet, Ilos. On the way there, Ashley came up to my private room to watch Netflix, but I didn't have Netflix, so I told her to leave. We're now on the planet Ilos, which wasn't hard at all. I'm not going to waste too much time on it. We fought more Geth. There were wide open spaces that I could run around in whenever there were a lot of enemies. I learned that my lift power completely works on armatures, which is hilarious. But yeah, no deaths or anything. We had another Mako section that gets interrupted for a second by a millennia-old artificial intelligence created by the now extinct Protheans who could give us important information about the Reaper War. Yawn. Meanwhile, Saren, Sovereign, and the Geth start their invasion of the Citadel. Almost like someone tried to warn them about how strong the enemy fleet was, but whatever. On the instretch of Ilos, I just ignored all the Colossuses and hit the conduit, which sent us back to the Citadel. Despite being in the middle of a war zone, we take a slow-moving elevator until it gets sabotaged and we have to proceed on foot. The fun thing about this section is that it's low gravity, so with my biotics, I could send the more dangerous Geth off into the ether. But yeah, like Ilos, the Geth weren't very tough at this point. I was a machine. I never even came close to dying, really. At the top of the Citadel Tower, we ran into Saren. Using my charm skill, I told him to delete himself, which he wasn't having, but then Shepard hit him with the no balls you won't, and Saren had no choice but to do it. At this point, I had a choice to have all fleets focus fire on Sovereign and end the conflict, or put more human lives at risk and focus on saving the Council first. The Council, who's doubted me every step of the way, where every time I talk to them, they're saying they don't believe me. The Council that grounded my ship and I had to go against to even be in this situation. My decision was easy. I saved them, of course. Little did I know, I still had a lot of this stupid game left because of what I alluded to earlier. Saren gets resurrected by Sovereign and turned into a monster man, and I have one last boss fight. I handled it like normal. I used my warp power on Saren to do steady damage to him, then when Geth reinforcements showed up, I focused on them. We got Saren's health about a quarter of the way down when suddenly my game froze. No matter, I thought. I must have just gotten unlucky. So I reloaded my last save at the start of the fight and went through it again. I got Saren's health even lower this time, almost halfway through, and a new cutscene started, so I'm good.
Sovereign's too strong. We have to pull back.
Well, okay, listen, that time I made it further before the game crashed, so maybe if I do it again, I can make it all the way. Well, at least my game didn't crash that time. Fourth time's the charm. All right, I didn't even make it to the cutscene that time before it crashed. At this point, I started Googling this and learned it's a known issue. The final boss fight is just bugged and has been since the Legendary Edition came out. As annoyed as I was, all I could do was troubleshoot. My first method was to load the game from the Mass Effect 1 menu itself rather than the Legendary Edition's menu. This did not work. Next up, someone on Reddit suggested that the crash is caused by using the power wheel. Since you pretty much have to use the power wheel on controller, I switched to keyboard and mouse, which would let me use hotkeys for all my powers. And if you know me, you know how much I hate playing games keyboard mouse, so that's how desperate I was. My aiming was really slow, and I constantly had to look at my hands to make sure I was pressing the right keys, but I was able to make progress on Saren. Fuck! Honestly, that's what I deserve for listening to Reddit. Next idea, lower all my graphics settings to the lowest. Okay, making progress, got the cutscene, made it all the way through the cutscene without a crash, we're back. It's over. At this point, I was seriously considering just giving up and ending this video by saying something mean about BioWare and EA, but my mother didn't raise me to be a quitter. She didn't really raise me to play video games for a living either, but she definitely didn't raise me to quit. I had one last hope. Someone said that the crash was caused by using powers on Saren, so I wanted to try beating him without shooting or using any powers on him at all. Every now and then he would hop on the ground and let me punch him, but for the most part, this was an exercise in patience, because I pretty much just had to let Ashley and Garrus shoot him for me. The Geth reinforcements that come in, I could use biotics on, so I just focused on them. As we wore Saren down, the first cutscene came and went. Alright, but I have seen that before. As the minutes went by, I continued just running around fighting Geth and trying not to die. And it did take minutes, until finally, Saren had fallen. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. I was holding my breath the entire final cutscene waiting for the game to crash, but spoiler alert, it never did. The game was over. I chose Anderson to join the Council because I'm based, and that was Mass Effect on Insanity without shooting. I would now like to read a reply to the Reddit comment that I showed earlier. I'm not sure that's entirely true, blah blah blah, but I never used warp, so it could be warp related, basically ruling out a no guns run. Well, random Redditor who left a comment 3 years ago. Ha! Thanks again to Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus for sponsoring this video. Check it out and use my code NOVHello to get some sweet bonuses like I mentioned. You can download it by scanning the QR code on screen, or click the link in the pinned comment or description. And if you like this video, check out my other bangers like the one on screen. Thanks to my patrons for supporting the channel like always.
I'm Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite store on the Citadel.